Hi and welcome to another posting of this Land Rover 101 where I've been working on for some time, but I've just started doing some videos on it to put onto my channel. For those who have started watching, I've got a couple of questions that was asked, and with my videos, what I'm doing for this and what I'm going to do for the Mark, what I am doing for the Mark II is any questions that I think need answering. I'm going to try and do them here, as long as I don't try and keep it on too long, and we'll see how we go with it. The more people are inquiring of answers, if there's anything, like say, I think's noteworthy of putting on, which hasn't been answered or shown in the videos, then I'll put them on. I'll talk to them, sorry about it. So I got a couple of questions. There were a few things that I forgot to mention last time I did the video, but we'll go over the questions that I've got. So a gentleman called Ray Chambers, you asked where will this thing stood with all the rust on it and the damage. Probably the Atlantic Ocean, because it was that bad. I have seen some bad Land Rovers with rust, but this was pretty bad, but it wasn't something that I wasn't expecting. Like I mentioned in my last video, Land Rovers always just seem to rot away, but I suppose they're no different from any other vehicle, and the kind of work that they do. So even though it was bad, they generally are bad anyway, so I would have cut the bits out even if they'd have been still there. If they were hold or it was just too thin, I'd have cut them out and replaced them anyway. So I knew that when I was buying the Land Rover, but yes, it was bad, and it was interesting where they'd hidden here so you couldn't see those outriggers. But anyway, so yeah, Atlantic Ocean probably. I had a question from Mark Warlow, I think it's Warlow. You asked about me running through the last video I did, running through everything really quickly and not really assessing some of the things that I'd done or where I was going to go with the things that I want to do with the Land Rover. I was concerned that some people might think that the videos might be a bit too long or whatever, and so because of the things that I'd done and just talking about them generally would shorten the video down. So I'm going to try and assess the things of which I have done primarily, and maybe touch upon some points which I want to maybe go with the Land Rover as I go on, but they might come out as I'm working on it and developing it, because I generally find when I'm working and modifying and designing things, it's when I've come up to that point in time that I recognise something's not quite right. And because this is the first 101 that I've ever worked on or owned, I'm finding new things all the time about the vehicle. So some of the upgrades, well, the first one I did was the servo, and so if we look at the servo, we can see that it's quite sizable. Now I've just measured the diaphragm rubber which goes inside the original, and that is roughly 8.5 inches in diameter. This one is 10.5 inches diameter. You asked where I got these parts from or supplies or everything. Well, I got this off eBay, and this is off a Land Rover Defender 19110 is this servo. Now the master is the standard master for the 101, so that's it, so it bolts straight on. Now the modification I did for this was quite entailed really. So the mount, the pedal box mount which the servo goes onto, that had to be modified. So I had to chop where the brackets are bent at right angles to its actual frame. I had to chop those and set them down a little bit. Now I don't think I've got any pictures for that. And then there's some brackets that sit underneath which come up to the bulkhead to support the whole thing when you pedal it, braking, to stop it twisting down. I had to remake those. I'm going to put an insert into the video so you'll be able to see the brackets that I made, and I've taken a picture so you can see hopefully clearer what I've done with this braking system, because well, when it was in the military, I'm presuming it was military, they've been pressing on this side. It was, the brackets were bent. They were bent, they've been pressing on the brake that hard to try and stop it at some point. Now, whether it was full loaded up with a trailer, I don't know. But obviously, a lot of pressure had been put on the brake to try and get this thing to stop. And with people talking about the brake's not being right good and they're doing disc brake conversions, yeah, it's a nice conversion, I suppose, but drums should offer good braking if they're set up properly and they've got enough assistance. So bigger servo, more assistance. So that's what it was. It was a Defender 90 or 110 that came off, and I got that off eBay for 30 quid with pedal box and master as well. But the master, even though it looks the same, they've got slightly different features for mounting the reservoirs onto. Other things that I've done, I'm going to put an insert into the video as well. People have complained about bleeding the brakes up. Now, when I was repiping the whole system up, I couldn't remember how it was, but because it's on the fronts, you've got two slaves to push the liners out. So you've got the flexi hose to the first cylinder, and then they're running from the first slave down to the bottom slave and then bleeding it off at the bottom. Now that seemed quite strange to me, because the highest point is where you would bleed. So what I did was, instead of taking from the flexi to the top slave, I took it to the bottom slave, and then I took it from the bottom slave back up to the top to bleed off the top. And I've had no problems bleeding this up at all, except for when my son thought the clutch was the brake. And he didn't want me to say this, but I went round all the system trying to bleed it off and nothing was working. And it's like, what's happening? Well, when you press clutch, nothing happens anyway. So once we got past that little stumbling block, it bled up quite happily. So that's what I did, but I'll put an insert in so you can see how I've routed that, just if you're not quite in touch with what I've said. So that's that. Now, one of the things I forgot to put in was the intermediate shaft on the transfer box, which wears, and I forgot to show in my last video that, so we'll go have a look at that now, and I'll show you that and a little modification for gear ratio in the transfer box. So instead of having an overdrive system on it, the Range Rover gears are different sizes on the high range side. So we'll go over there and we'll have a look at that. So I discussed with the gearbox and the intermediate shaft, which I found a problem with when I was rebuilding the gearbox with my son. This is the intermediate gear set, and this is the shaft. And if we just clean it off, I'll show you the damage of which we have on it. So this is the damage on the shaft here, and you can see where the needle bearing, let me just get a needle bearing and show you. As the needle bearing's running on the shaft, it's trying to twist like that because of the helical gear, and because it's twisting, it's digging in there. So I don't know if you can see it well enough, but you can see the shape, this form here, where it's loaded there, and you can obviously see it's an angle. There's a load angle being put into it, onto the needle bearing as it's driving. And so I think one of the things about the gearbox, or I should say the rumble, which might be coming from the gearbox, could be this gear sat on this needle. Now it seems strange that they would, in a sort of sense, design a shaft like this. I get it in a sense that it's just one piece, you machine it up and put it all together, and when it breaks you swap it all out and put a new one in. But I think that's a bit of a waste and a bit crazy really, when a repair could be easily accommodated. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to have this machining ground to tolerance. So the tolerance, if I've got this right, for this fit is U7/H6, which is roughly about 0.0254 of a millimetre, to be interference fit for the new sleeve. Well, these are actually needle bearing racers, so these are machine ground to fit on shafts. So it's a 40mm OD and the ID is 35, so the wall thickness obviously is 2.5 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is, with the interference, it'll be 35.0254 roughly millimeters interference. So this will be heat shrunk onto the shaft. So there's going to be 3 of these that's going to go on. So I've got 3 bushes, and the reason why I've got them in this set, so they'll be all stacked together like that on the shaft. Now the reason why I've done that is, on the shaft here you'll see these oil feeds in the shaft, and it's a splash fed into this shaft, and then these feed the needle bearing. Well, obviously when I put these on, they need to feed oil, otherwise it's going to overheat and burn out. So they're going to be stepped. So I've got it so that they're actually stepped, so it'll be the actual 2 parts, I'm saying stepped, where they mate together I should say, it'll be there, and I'm just going to carefully grinding and polish up a little half hole on both pieces, and when I assemble it, when I heat them up and assemble it, they're going to sit directly over that to oil feed from the gallery, and then it'll lubricate this bearing as it's supposed to do. So that's my repair on this. So apart from the intermediate shaft, which has needed repairing, and one of the reasons why I stripped the box down was just to see what condition it was, I also wanted to change the gear ratios in the transfer box, and I'd read on a forum somewhere about the Range Rover having a different ratio to the actual differential gear. It sits in the transfer box, and so I bought a Range Rover box for any parts that I might need, because one of the things was with this box as well, the top was off, the gear selector top, and it was quite strange was that having it taken off, I thought, oh, it's probably broken, something broken in it, but there's actually nothing wrong with it. But I bought the box for parts and for this ratio difference and the gears. So this is the 101 gear, the normal drive gear on the intermediate set, and this one is the Range Rover. So if I put them like that, you can see the difference in the sizes. So on the differential gear, it's got obviously a smaller gear to accommodate obviously that. So this should help improve my top range, so 4th gear, because to be honest with you, most people are all saying that, you know, it's heavy revving and you're getting nowhere with it. So that's why I got this Range Rover box as well. It wasn't just for parts, although I didn't get much out of it, because to be honest with you, there was actually nothing really wrong with my box. So other than the intermediate shaft, it was pretty good. So I just rebuilt it all, checked the pump, and then put it all back together with my son. And I'm just waiting, like I say, I'm just waiting now for the intermediate shaft, for getting that repaired. And then once I've got that repaired, then I can finish off the box, and then that'll be done. One more thing I mentioned that I was doing on the brakes, when I rebuilt the brakes, on the front plates, backing plates, there's some little bolts, and these bolts, there's 2 per plate, backing plate, and these bolts, you adjust the shoes to the drum so that they mate together properly when you brake. It's so they're not cockled in any way, so they're efficient. Well, the one at the back is easy to adjust, but the one at the front, all the steering mechanism brackets are bolted to the swivel pin housing, and you can virtually not get to them. And because they're a flat drive screwdriver head, these things, you're just not going to be able to turn them. You couldn't get to it. It's an absolute crazy idea. So I made some bolts. So I think those are 5/16 UNF. If memory serves me correct, the 5/16 UNF. So I got some 5/16 bolts, and I just machined down the ends, and then I put those in. So they were still a bit tight at the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change them again if I can get some grub screws, some 5/16 grub screws that long. Because one of the things that I struggled with was, it wasn't the case of not being able to tighten them up and get them set properly. It was the locking nut on it that was the difficult thing, because the backing plates are recessed, and with everything in the way, it's just really awkward to get to that with the spanners, you know, one on the head and one on the nut. So I'm going to see if I can get some 5/16 grub screws this long, and then I'll put obviously an Allen key in, and then I can get the spanner. I'm not messing around too much then, and I think that'll be a better, again, modification just for these, because that I just thought was crazy. So yeah, those are the areas which I've been working on. Nothing else as much has been done as such. Like I say, I've gone through the brakes, and now it's all going to be the body and what we're going to do with the body. So we'll see in my next video where I've gone with that and how I'm going to do that. I've still got quite a number of things to do with the engine oil up. Same with the axles. I've got all up the axles, gearbox, engine. There's no water in it, no exhaust on it, so I've got those to make, because I'm going to make some exhaust for it instead of having the cast iron runners. So those are the things I'm going to be playing with as well, and hopefully we can get it all coming together quite quickly now, especially against what we have been doing. There's still, like I say, some bits, but it'll be I think you're going to find it interesting what I'm going to do with the body, and I'm doing a drawing on CAD for that, so you'll be able to see an idea, because it's all scaled, and you'll be able to see what I want it to look like with that. So yeah. So another thing I forgot to mention, which we're going to insert into the video, is the distributor. I said that the distributor had the setup of a 24-volt system and not the standard Range Rover distributor in. So it's a proper sealed distributor. So I thought I'd show you that it's sat in there, but this is a 12-volt now. I put just normal distributor electronic pickups in. It's just a kit I got off eBay, same thing. I just mounted it in, a little bit of messing around, making sure it was getting it all in line. So I think I've got it all in line as it should be, because it wasn't for this distributor. So there was a little bit of playing around, just getting it in the right position. But I've got that sorted out, and it was quite an easy mount in there. So if you got a bit of wherewithal, there should be no reason why you can't put the Hall sensor pickup set in there, and then having the right coil to mate up to that system, and which tells you on the little box that you get with the pickup and the rotor set. So there's that, which I thought I'd better mention and show you. And then the gear stick assembly, which I didn't modify this, somebody'd done this before I got it, so I don't, like I said before, I don't know if it's military or somebody did it when they came out. And it works perfectly fine. So, but that's how they've done this. So there's a bracket here, which is just a bit of tube that they've bent and just put some flats on, and this is just some flat plate, and they've just stuck it together and just remounted this bit, which I believed would have sat on there, and the gear stick came over here. So they've just modified this little bit here, so you can see where they bent it there and straightened it out. But it's just a standard thing, dead simple. And the cover, they've just modified the cover to sit on top, which I'm just going to tidy up and make it a little bit better. But that's what they've done, and like I say, it selects gear perfectly fine. Without having to move halfway around planet trying to get your gears, I'm presuming. So yeah, so I just thought I'd show those, gear stick and distributor, which I think it's better that way, nice seal thing, especially if you're going to go taking this thing somewhere else than dry land, as it were. So yeah, there you go. So anyway, hope you enjoy this, and we'll see where we are with the next instalment of exactly where I'm going to go with it, and hopefully we can keep the interest with this going, and we can all have a bit of a laugh at it. Anyway, you take it steady, you lot out there, and always enjoy your comments and just see how, you know, it goes with it, and all the encouraging stuff to yeah, just keep pushing this thing along. Anyway, you all take it steady.